Now we're actually recording, and hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams D podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And each week we come at you with two brand new reviews for two brand new records. And this week we're going to be talking about the new album. It's not new, but it's 2026 new from the Lemon Twigs. Their new record, "Look for Your Mind!" Exclamation point, as well as the new album from Madonna. You might have heard of her. Confessions Dose. So let's start off talking about the Lemon Twigs. And the Lemon Twigs are fascinating to me because this is a band that, by and large, should probably not exist or retain any form of success in today's music economy because of how, like, old school they are. I really became aware of them when their 2023 album Everything Harmony came out, and people were talking about it as like a really definitive heavy hitter for rock albums that year. And it was like a soft rock kind of, old school, like pre-Lindsey Buckingham Fleetwood Mac style sort of rock album. And it had all of this like analog appeal to it. And it had this real sort of just not quite muscle, but it's just like this album sounds out of time. It was very much refreshing to listen to something like that. But personally, honestly, in 2024, they came out with A Dream Is All We Know. And I actually like that one a little bit better. I have a long standing love affair with the genre known as psychedelic pop. And I really love when people are able to sort of bring something new to it or just, add a little flair, just bring it up in general, just because I kind of think we need more of it, just because even back in the day, it was something that only people with like, oodles and oodles of fucking money could actually accomplish. So, now that it's a little bit more accessible, we're seeing some people try their hand at it. And honestly, I think the Lemon Twigs are some of the better people to kind of throw their hat into this ring, especially because the Lemon Twigs clearly really love the Zombies, which, that's going to get you along well with me because the Zombies, Odyssey, and Oracle is the single best psychedelic pop album ever recorded. It is better than every single one also released in that same decade, and I will fight you on that. But needless to say, I was looking forward to a new Lemon Twigs album, but just because it was released in the volley of releases that came out in like the last 2.5 months, it kind of passed us by. But now that we're here, and now that I'm here, we have an album that I find quite fascinating because it feels kind of like not a response, but like there's this thing that happens in discographies of bands where they'll end up releasing two releases that feel like mirror reflections of each other, or they feel like they have some kind of relationship. And I'm not necessarily saying there's a direct correlation between this and A Dream Is All We Know, but there seems to be a kind of, I guess, sonic differentiation where the sort of clean dreaminess of the previous album is traded for something with a little bit more grit, a little bit more power pop. Like there is a little bit less sunshine pop on here, and there is a little bit more just straight up psychedelia and a little bit more just straight up rock music on here. And I think this is just another solid addition to the Lemon Twigs expanding catalog. And like people can accuse this band of playing Brian Wilson, playing Paul McCartney, like they clearly want to be
Their
Wings.
names are literally Brian and Michael.
I mean, look, I would honestly contemplate changing my name at that point just so I could get ahead of the critics. But if you're this good at being when people sort of use this sort of complaint, the tribute act complaint, as I like to call it, I feel like a lot of the criticism and finer points gets lost in the shuffle, and the actual details and work that gets put into an album tends to get shoved aside for dumb reasons. Like, I don't necessarily think it's bad that we're having people make music that sounds like music that came out 80 years ago because it was 80 years ago. Not 80, but you know what I mean. Regardless, Jen, I'm pretty sure you were into the Lemon Twigs at like some point, I
I'm
think.
a I'm a like so-so Lemon
Okay.
Twigs fan up until this point. I've liked some of the songs that I've heard out in the wild, but I never like gone in deep on their
Mhm.
discography. And I think a lot of the commentary on, these guys sound just like so and so from so and so many years ago. I think that stuck with me a little bit and made me like not as immediately drawn to their records in general, but I was listening to a lot of their singles and I liked those quite a bit. But the thing that makes the Lemon Twigs different from, I hate that this came up, but it feels natural that it did. The thing that makes the Lemon Twigs different from a rock band very closely evoking a very specific time period and scene and sound that got a lot of criticism for evoking it very directly, that being Greta Van Fleet.
By me, notably.
The difference in a Greta Van Fleet and a Lemon Twigs is that, frankly, the expectations of the scenes that these respective bands ride in are very different as to how a new act can present itself and how a worthwhile tribute can be made. Because the thing that's interesting about the Lemon Twigs is that these guys are very into old-fashioned jangle pop, rubber soul era Beatles,
Oh
early
yes.
Fleetwood Mac, a lot of Marty Balin in these guys' pen. But the thing that made them different was that they started their career doing stuff like writing a concept album about a chimpanzee being raised as a human child. And so when you know that about these guys, you get a sense that they have a bit of theatricality about them in a
Yes.
manner not too dissimilar from the Red Clay Strays, like we talked about last week,
Yeah.
where on this album, what I found very interesting about the way that the Lemon Twigs write songs is that they find ways to take on very different voices in these more firm constructions of love song narratives.
Mm.
Take, for example, this album has a lot of sickeningly sweet melancholy that you absolutely want out of music that
Ooh.
sounds like this. But take moments like You're Still My Girl,
Ooh,
where the
yes.
songwriting is very clearly tailored in such a way that the boys are bringing a little bit more of a intentional toxicity and
Hmm.
insidiousness to the voice of the song to create something that's more atmospheric than the initial songwriting
Yep.
and lyricism by itself might imply. It's that sharp contrast of the sweet sound that you might have gotten used to by this point in the album, with a lot of very careful choices of words that make this one stand out amongst other songs
Yes.
on this album. And this album is full of moments like this, where a lot of songs just have that one little extra idea that separates this from sounding like we're just riffing on our favorites of the past. These are guys that are interested in doing something a little bit more formal and a little bit more artistically loud than a band like Greta Van Fleet would. To bring it back around to the little dig that I did at the beginning there. And that made this record very, very fun to me. Right from the start with Look for Your Mind, which is the most jangly of all the songs on
Hmm.
this record. So I was kind of surprised when the rest of the album got away from how glitzy this one sounds. But
Yes.
these guys are just great vocalists. And
Oh
that's
my.
another one of the fundamentals that this band
The
is writing.
harmonies. I mean, my God, they're amazing.
Harmonies are incredible, and on moments like two or three, we can get these very elegant, romantic sentiments
Mm.
and hokey falsettos that
Hmm.
make for just the right combination of the best way that I can describe this album is sickeningly sweet.
Oh,
Even in its
yes.
most like melancholic moments, there's a cherubic quality to the way that these guys present themselves that make it always fun to watch.
There's kind of a happy-go-lucky spirit in this album that is like, and I don't mean this as overtly as my language choice is going to suggest. There is a happy-go-lucky, almost like psychosis about this album of like, just the notion of everything in your life and interpersonal relationships being wrong, but you just kind of have to keep on smiling and trucking on anyway, regardless of whether or not you have agency in your situation. And I mean, like, That's not applicable to the modern music climate in some respects of just like, hey, I've got to listen to these fun psychedelic jangle pop jams so that I can distract myself from the horrors. And I mean, like, there is a bit of synchronicity there that I do think works. And I mean, as you have mentioned, this album, this band, impeccable craftsmen. I think what's genuinely super underrated about this duo is how instrumentally proficient they actually are. I didn't know, like, because you listen to this band and it's just like, oh, I take it these two guys are like the front people, and then they're like, they've got some other people they enlist. I mean, like, there are other credited musicians on here, but no, most of like the instruments on here are played by one of these two guys. Like on the first song, it's just Brian and Michael. Like Michael's the one on the 12 string, Brian's the one on both the drums, the bass, and the tambourine. Like these guys are very multi-talented. They want you to know it, and they're able to flex and add body to these songs and add detail to these songs, which is what they thrive on. Like when people do the whole like, you're doing Brian Wilson or you're doing Paul McCartney, I have to like look them in the face and just be like, you do realize you just named like the single two most influential pop music figures to ever exist, and you're complaining that people are influenced by them. And like I understand that there is a closeness to the sound here that obviously puts this in a bit of a different league, but it also again it puts on those horse blinders that I really hate because it lets you ignore things like the fact that songs like 2 or 3, the second song on here, the flutes, the woodwinds, the fucking saxophones, the cello. Oh my God. These songs, when they add like the fucking quartet into this shit, it actually really does sound like something off of Odyssey and Oracle, where it's just so fucking produced. You feel like that, a Hammond organ and a Mellotron are about to pop up on there. And occasionally on the previous album, they even did. And that's the kind of thing that lets you, like, if you're looking for this kind of stuff and if you're looking for it done well, I feel like there is plenty to find here. And those sort of songwriting hooks and sort of conceits, that's how I know when someone is tributing them correctly. Because, like, if you're doing a Beach Boys thing, the notable thing is that you have the template of all pop music. God only knows. Happiest sounding song of all time. You read the lyrics, it sounds like a suicide note. That's the dichotomy there. You use the Trojan horse of your lyricism snuck under the pleasant sounds, and you end up getting a combination of the two things that yields a new context. And honestly, if you're able to nail that, which is not an easy thing to do without coming across as cliched or hackneyed, if you nail it, then you're good by my estimation anyway. And I think these guys are fantastic at it. There's stuff like I Just Can't Get Over Losing You, which is a very kind of relatively brief moment on the album, but does also show, I mean, like, look at the title. Think about what the lyrics might be implying here. You can be like, oh, yeah, like, oh, I love this person who I used to love. And then you're just like, no, I just can't get over it. Uh, you got to do a little bit of legwork with some of the pop music like this. And it's not difficult legwork, but it's legwork that does require you to pay just a little bit of attention. Mean to Me, I think, showcases this band's kind of really off-color sense of humor that I think is just very entertaining, combined with these incredibly sticky jangle pop hooks that I love. And you also have just show-stopping moments, like one of the final songs on here, Joy, which is like one of the most massive sounding pop songs I've heard in a good fucking moment. The instrumentation is so fucking dense on here, and I just fucking love it. There is a I don't want to say colder sound because that implies something that I don't really mean, but like there was a warmth in the previous album that I do feel in pockets on here, but there is something just a little bit more emotionally complicated, I guess, because there is some stuff on the previous record that's a little bit more like, oh, there's some depth here with the songwriting going on. But on this album specifically, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of their intention to sort of dip their toes in the water before to see if they could pull off the psychedelic pop thing. And now this is intentionally them kind of putting a little bit more of themselves into it. And as a result, I think I do prefer the previous album slightly just as a record, just because I flatly like the songs more, which is not the most concrete reason to prefer one record over the other. but at the same time, I feel more of an artistic voice in this record than I do the previous one. I think it is a more unique album than that one, which I definitely think means something. So it's definitely not going to be pushing any new ground, but like when people do stuff like this, I feel like we need to separate the men from the boys when it comes to people who are heavily inspired by this stuff. Because, yeah, Greta Van Fleet are certainly the boys here. And that you go listen to that production, there's not a single fucking Led Zeppelin album or song that sounds as sterile and hollow and gross as those instrumentals do. On here, I think that somebody who listens to plenty of psychedelic pop that came from back in the 60s very regularly is going to get a good, enjoyable time out of this, bare minimum.
What I think is interesting about this record is that its central lyrical idea, the idea of this person that can't get over the loss of this other person, comes back in so many iterations across the record in a way that leads to this being a very melancholic, psychotic breakup album
Hmm.
that ends on this lovely little narrative triptych
Hmm.
of joy as this kind of last moment of longing. And then My Heart Is in Your Hands Tonight, which is another one of those like darkness slightly underneath the veneer of the
Mm.
jangle moments where the real sentiment of My Heart Is in Your Hands Tonight is that I know you're going to come back around. I know I don't have anything to worry about. My heart is in your hands tonight, and that's a good thing because it means there's nowhere you can go. Like, if I wanted to get real dramatic monologue-y about it, but this song knows not to do that. And
Yes.
then the surprising twist on Your True Enemy, where the narrator experiences this ego death that's represented by this really interesting vocal manipulation that's happening
Yeah.
on the last few lines that don't sound like anything else on the record. I love it. I love when this album gets otherworldly. It does it also on the song Fire and Gold, which is talking a lot
Ooh,
about
yes.
notions of the afterlife and reincarnation, connecting to. I love the hook of two or three, the idea that you're so enamored with this person and so fascinated by their intellect that they must have knowledge of their past lives.
Or that you start to believe in things like reincarnation with the sole intent of it benefiting you with the relationship of another person. It's like it's a very silly but also like deceptively revealing kind of like the way you describe the final three songs is just this sort of triptych. Like I love that vocal manipulation point you make because it feels like they are trying to sonically manifest the consequences of the narrative of the album, which is really fascinating. And I feel like that's something that, like, that's something you do when you have really, really good instincts. I want to see these guys get maybe a little bit more ambitious because, like, they are clearly. Like they have what they do down to a science at this point. I think that they like it's less pronounced because they obviously do not oscillate between the extreme genres, but I would say I'd put Lemon Twigs in the same category as modern bands like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, who are, they're such a compact unit of creative minds that they can just kind of do whatever they set their mind to. And I think these guys have it. But what I want to see them do, I want to see them go fucking like full spiritualized. I want an enormous concept album. I want blown out instrumentals. I want orchestral fucking shit. I want you to take this to the moon because I feel like these guys have that in them because they seem like little pranksters. They just seem like these little sprightly dudes, and I want to see how far they can go.
This is going to manifest as their next album being a sequel where the chimpanzee goes to college.
And you know what? And you know what? I'm there. I will listen to the Chimpanzee College concept album. Clip that.
Huge endorsement for the Lemon Twigs, honestly.
Yeah, just honestly, I'm always
I
looking for an
would
excuse to
listen to
recommend
the
psychedelic pop to
chimp
people.
I would also listen to the Chimpanzee Goes to College album.
You know what? And we all should live in a world where we all collectively decide that that is the case. And now, oh boy, let's talk about Madonna.
Has Madonna ever been discussed on this YouTube channel before?
That's the funny thing, Jen. No. And it's crazy because in the last 2.5 years, I've actually kind of become a stealthily, insanely big Madonna fan, just because like it was spurred on by the fact that Riley listened to Madonna's debut album, the self-titled Madonna, and I took a listen to that a couple of months after they had spun that and said it was fantastic, only to discover that I'm like, oh, this is like a Fleetwood Mac Rumors tier pop record where every single song is like a bona fide classic that I have heard before. I just didn't know it was a Madonna song. And now I'm like, I will listen to a song from the Madonna self-titled almost every single day if I am taking a car ride. That just will inevitably happen. And I also love a lot of her stuff after that. I mean, like her singles are just kind of fucking peachable. Like the Immaculate Collection, the singles compilation, is one of my favorite named compilations, just because
Love it.
that's fucking ridiculous. And that's the thing about Madonna is that she has always been fucking ridiculous. She has always been one of those envelope pushers, always been one of those people who loves to grab headlines and shock people and just kind of and mess with them, really. Like that was part of her artistic just sort of persona is that she evolved out of the Madonna self-titled and then immediately became way more sexual, way more provocative, talking about ideas like religion in her music that got her stuff like boycotted and everything. But naturally, it all just snowballed into her becoming like the biggest pop star on planet Earth for like 30 years. And, that run, it's pretty fucking unimpeachable. You've got everything from the Madonna self-titled, which even, Joe Schmo on the side of the street is going to know half of the songs on, but you've also got the music nerd albums like Ray of Light, for instance, which has this kind of strange trip-hop new wavy kind of atmosphere to it that just sounds unlike anything of the era at all. And the thing is that she has a really solid run of records, and then the millennium happens. And it's kind of like it's like she does the James Bond theme Die Another Day, and then her stock just plummets like weirdly, like just steeply for a couple of years until she releases very relevantly a comeback album called Confessions on the Dance Floor, very notably known for the ABBA sampling huge smash hit Hung Up, my favorite Madonna song because that ABBA sample flip is just fucking psychotically catchy. I will never tire of hearing it. It's amazing. So, after Confessions on the Dance Floor, Madonna has inserted herself into the modern pop landscape of dance pop that, Britney Spears' Blackout is fostering at around that specific time. And then Madonna kind of goes into the wilderness for a while, and her following albums I don't want to lead off just by saying that they're bad because I feel like that kind of undersells what I think they actually are. And what I think they are is experiments. They are Madonna trying different things. Like, Madonna was one of the first big pop stars to get on the Sophie train, for instance. And Bitch I'm Madonna is not my favorite Madonna song by any means, but holy shit, does that Sophie beat knock. So she's been trying to sort of do something new for a while now and has kind of had mixed results. Like she just hasn't commanded the attention that she did. Just because, I mean, think about it. Do kids these days even really care about Madonna? I don't really know or think so. Like she's
Yeah,
got her
it's
diehards, don't
not.
get me wrong, but it's not somebody I hear talked about all that much. So when Confessions on the Dance Floor 2 was announced, I was like, okay, on the one hand, sequel to your comeback album. I like that comeback album. I love that single. There's potential here, and it feels like Madonna, who is clearly the very type of egotistical pop star who absolutely knows that, this is a statement. Her making a sequel actually does mean something beyond just wanting to get streaming numbers. But at the same time, you're like, how thorough of a concept is such a sequel going to be? And are you chasing the high of just wanting to get back in people's good graces because you're in a similar place that you were 20 years ago? And good God, it was actually 20 years ago. So I was tentatively being like, all right, I want to look forward to this because I want it to be good because I mean, I want everything to be good, but I also like, if Madonna puts her best foot forward, I see no reason why she shouldn't be able to succeed. She's got more money than God, haha, and she is still rather talented. She is a good singer still who has maintained her voice pretty well. So, when I look at Confessions 2 here and I see its hour-long runtime and I'm like, "Oh boy, that's pretty impressive." I am a bit wary. And then I turn on the album and I discover it's wall to wall bangers. I was kind of floored. I kind of just think this album is fantastic. Like, it is every bit worthy of taking on the mantle of being a sequel to a previous Madonna album. And paradoxically, Confessions on the Dance Floor 1, that title's really just kind of flavor text, you know? Confessions 2, on the other hand, there's actually a little bit more underneath the hood here. We see an aging Madonna actually being a little bit reflective on this dance pop house inflected album, where she's talking about how strange it is that the power dynamics of her being this untouchable goddess tier pop star around all of these other people makes her feel kind of strange, and how just the idea of dance can be liberating, freeing, and all of this other shit. And that's nice, but the beats have to knock. And thankfully, this is one of the most expensive albums of the year because you look at those producers. She is bringing back every Swedish pop producer that has been making music in the last 25 years, and they put their ho 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 pussy into this. Because, okay, like, sincerely, the singles for this are a blast. I love the Sabrina collaboration on here that Madonna does. Like, clearly she is
Did
trying to
not
pick
disappoint one bit.
she's trying to pick the person who most emblematizes her as an artist. And, Sabrina being the provocative, sexy blonde, absolutely a great pick. Their vocal blends are fantastic. They have great vocal chemistry, and not for nothing, Sabrina just sounds really hot on this song. Like, I just don't know how else to put it other than she really leaned into that affectation in her voice on it, and it really, really works. And that is far from the only moment on here that I think is a standout. I think some of the hooks on here are just planet demolishingly awesome. The hook on the song Bizarre, which comes halfway into this album, is monstrous. I cannot get this shit out of my head. I love it. And I mean, honestly, this album does a fantastic job of staggering some of its best moments throughout itself. I think that maybe the second half of it is more consistent but has less highlights. But I'm never less interested in what's happening because even if it's not a wall to wall banger, like most of the front half of this album, frankly, is, Good for the Soul is such a phenomenal way to kick this shit off after the sort of interlude of I Feel So Free. But whenever she's doing something a little bit less in your face, she's doing something that's a little bit more just kind of outright interesting, like My Sins Are My Savior or Betrayal. So, yeah, I mean, like, this is just one of those instances where I'm like, this is an album that is so good that if somebody was like, yeah, that's actually my favorite in Madonna's catalog, I would be like, you know what, man? I don't agree at all, but I absolutely see the vision because this is not a bad pick. If you think that this is the best Madonna album, I understand. I get it.
This feels like a full circle moment after we spent a whole year growing in
Right,
our love of dance music
right.
together by reviewing so many dance albums. To
Hmm.
get a new Madonna record, and not just a new Madonna album, but one that explicitly ties itself into Madonna's career history. Felt like a perfect moment for us to reflect, man. And when I put this on, I really was not expecting this to feel like a performance lecture in the form of
Yes.
an album.
Hmm.
But it really does feel like Madonna using the construction of the album to create this kind of performance art where
Hmm.
you express in the construction of a dance album a point that you're trying to make about the relationship that you have with dance music. And I love that concept. The way that
Yes.
Madonna is able to use these song conceits to explore her dynamic with the art form and how it affects different parts of her life is
Mm.
so rich while allowing for sharp hooks that don't have to be distracting in any kind of, esoteric or a didactic
No.
manner. We don't have to say too much to get the point across. Like on the first song, I Feel So Free, by the time we get to the end of the tone setting, don't be a vibe kill is the thing that really sets the tone for what this is.
Uh-huh.
And I loved a point that she made about I never know why people like me. That's why I like to go dancing. And then you get
Mm.
this little hook of like safety in numbers. And that's such that is a very funny idea for a hook to put in a dance track because
Insanely.
you can simulate that as you're listening to it with a group of people. Like you can
Yeah.
experience that sensation if you're thinking about it, if you're listening to the music. And so I've been thinking about my relationship with live music a lot when listening to this album.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this
And
album is mixed like you are in the club listening to it. The bass on here is fucking big. Holy shit, is it big?
that's a big contributor to why I've been thinking about this album as a kinetic experience because it's
Mm,
moving with a lot of natural tempo by having these songs bridge into each other so eloquently.
mm.
And I just love these hooks. Like the flowery language is over. I'm here to talk about how good this sounds now.
Ah,
This is incredible. I loved getting on Google and learning about the names of the people on Dance to Ria
that's
as I
such a fucking awesome song. It's like a narrative conceit that's just a just sort of interweaving kind of like samples from different music that she's referencing vocally. It's fucking weird and I love it. What a galaxy brained idea for a song.
I love when she talks about being in the elevator with Debbie Mazar and the beat gets
Hmm.
just like really quiet for a
You
second.
feel like you are like actually getting to just experience a night as Madonna, and it's like it's there's something weirdly novel about that.
There are multiple times where I thought I needed to write down, Madonna just like me for real, listening to the way that she talks about her introversion. But like I
Mm.
really do mean that.
No, yeah, for
I
sure.
I really resonate with what she's talking about in terms of being on the dance floor as a moment of like extroverted connection and ritual practice that is just a hack for a certain kind of social anxiety, and I think I have it.
Yep. No, I get it. I understand.
Or at least it works on me the same way that it does for her, because I've been revisiting moments of the past few years where I'm like getting to the place that she's talking about on songs like I Feel So Free, Bring Your Love, One
Yep.
Step Away. Like being able to describe that idea and then make songs about inviting the audience to chase that feeling
Hmm.
is such a resonant idea in pop music. It's something that we keep coming back to, the idea of I want to make the perfect song that makes the people feel how I feel. And so much of this
Hmm.
album is about that. And there are moments where I completely went with it. And I appreciate that a lot about this record.
I completely agree with you. And you know what? There are even moments on here where I'll break from the pack a little bit from what other people seem to think. Like, is Read My Lips the lowest rated song on this album because somebody heard someone not speak English and then got weird? Because this hook is fucking unstoppable. Like,
It's too
how do you
good.
hear this and not instantly want to shake your ass? Like, I'm sorry, but if you're weird about this, you're lame. Sorry. And like the entire like front half of this is just superb. What I think she does very smartly with the structure of this is that she's clearly trying to balance, on the knife's edge of being conceptual while still not getting in her own way. Because obviously, the Madonna pop songs and dance songs, they're gonna be these incredible, throttling, momentum infused, sparkly things. But when you start getting conceptual, when you start throwing in some spoken word, when you start trying to make people think a little bit, that's when you can trip yourself up. But I think that the first half of this album containing like the vast majority of the straight wall-to-wall bangers while still having songs like Dance Hysteria to kind of throw you something ambitious or something weird, a left hook to kind of keep you really involved in how everything goes. I think the emotionally complicated second half still does a good job at maintaining interest. Like, again, I'm somebody who is deeply, deeply scrutinous of an album's runtime. If you go over 60 minutes, I'm watching you like a fucking hawk because oftentimes albums simply do not need to be that long. This, on the other hand, I would argue I just wouldn't cut a single song from because the idea is that you're supposed to listen to it all night and be fucking just a puddle of sweat by the end of it. You are nothing by the end of this album. And frankly, the way that it keeps sort of just going forward with these house beats, it's so nice. It's so expensive. It's so immersive. And it just never really stops moving. If you throw this on and you just like need an hour to burn, that hour's gonna go by really fucking fast. And that's probably the best compliment I can give something like this is the fact that its weight is just, it is not sacrificed for anything. It makes absolutely no concessions about itself. And I'm thrilled by that. Does it have the, immediate, sticky, sort of like fully formed quality that some of her best albums, like, Ray of Light or the self-titled do? Not necessarily, but I think that the conceptual angle adds something to this record that is genuinely worth appreciating, which, like, how often does it happen where, like, the sequel album is the more, like, worthy of its own concept or worthy of its own themes?
Ah,
That doesn't really happen all that much. So it's
yeah,
interesting
I don't
that this
know.
is
Not to go like too deep in our nerd circles, but I guess visions
go
of
for it.
bodies being burned is the first thing that comes to mind.
Honestly, that is
But that
not
was
a
it, but
bad
it
choice.
wasn't built that way, you
No,
know?
you're
So
correct. But it just kind of happened to work out that way. But still, it kind of like you can sort of see how it slots into the archetype. But that's just the thing is that Madonna's somebody who, like, if anything, I am way more willing to kind of go with the flow of some of her more weird and out there kind of creative experiments like those last like three or so albums that she did before this because it's like if she had this in her all along, all of those were things she did very intentionally. Like Madonna has always been somebody who likes fucking with people and likes being a little provocative and weirding people out, making them uncomfortable. And like the BDSM throwback vibes of shit like Lady X, yeah, it's 100% her trying to stir the pot a little bit and make her music sound as like weird and jagged and electro synthy as possible. And yeah, it doesn't always work. But I am also like, yeah, but if she could still make music this good, I'm like, okay, I at least see that all of that was part of your vision. Like I get it and I respect it. I've never listened to a Madonna album and been like, this sounds uninspired. And I've heard American Life, and that album sucks shit, but it's not uninspired. And thus, I think that is probably the most admirable thing about this is that Madonna is like what throwing like she's got to be north of 60 at least right now, and she's fucking
hey,
like I will admit
you know
the vocal
better. Be
performances are not
nice.
what they used to be necessarily, but I mean, my God, the production does a phenomenal job of supporting her on here. I think she does still sound really good.
Yeah, she does sound really good. And she sounds really good with all these. I want to shout out all the features on this because
Yeah, Martin Garrix.
there wasn't a single other voice that showed up on this album that I wasn't immediately like taken
Mm,
by. Sabrina, Feed, On Read My Lips, Martin
yes.
Garrix, Stromae, Lola,
Mm,
Leon on the
mm.
test. Incredible stuff.
Yes, I completely agree. It's just it's kind of a it's a treasure trove. I just read she is 67 years old. Oh my God. That's insane. That's patently fucking crazy that a 67-year-old made this album. That's awesome. That's so fucking
I
sick,
love
man.
it.
That rocks. Like this is one of the most fun albums to be released this year, and it's just, it's nice that a legend can still throw around her weight and have everybody rally around her because we're far from the only people calling this like a phenomenal return to form. This is 1000% the best Madonna album of the last 2 decades, and it's not close.
It's always great for an artist of this size to have a moment like this where we can have a new reason to appreciate. And
Nobody,
this is
nobody wants
it.
to come up and be like, "Oh, the new Madonna album's boring." Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Anywho, highly recommend this album. Highly, highly,
Yes,
highly. It
big
is
thumbs
worth
up for
every
Madonna.
minute. Thumbs way the fuck up for both albums this week. Just a fun week all around. I'm very very pleased with this. We kind of had a little touch and go moment of trying to cover albums this week, so much to my shock, we ended up landing on the two that probably would have been the best choices. So sometimes life works out, kids. So
Yes. Go check out both the Lemon Twigs and the Madonna records. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by joining our YouTube membership page. You'll get access to our Discord server where we hang out and talk about what we're listening to, watching, reading, everything in between. And you'll get access to some bonus videos like our Superman review and our video on Obsession and Backrooms, with more stuff coming to the premium video feed down the pike very soon. And as always,
rock over London, rock on Chicago, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. What happens here stays here. What? Why is this even listed here?
what happens in Vegas?
I fucking guess. That's I don't that sounds kind of suspicious. Fucking pull the plug. Pull the plug.